the numbers the foundation added into the amount is significant. And if we were looking at less for next year, we'll have to rethink that. So I would be open to any questions. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, I knew the pastor's report was going to be really good, so I put it in here twice. Go ahead, pastors.
All right, for the pastor's report, first thing just to note is our COVID rollbacks. We've kind of rolled back everything except for the offering. So the offering is the only thing that has stayed kind of along with the adjustments made for COVID. What we like to do is after Labor Day, so after summer's done, go back to having the offering and worship the way we used to do that. I think we're out in left field. Go back to the concerns with them as I think we would do first offering, and then at some point, then yeah, we would probably stagger that so we don't change it all at once. So we'd probably do the offering first, and then maybe the next thing council can talk about is when do we just go back to doing the communion wafers the way we used to do it. So that's a good point, though. We should probably talk about that. Yep, Sharon?
So is that just, to go back, is it something that, is there a reason for going back? I mean, it's a change that it was now 2 years and it was just in the back of church. So is there a definite, real reason other than tradition
I think,
for us to go back? That is,
yeah, I think for me, it fits naturally as a part of the worship service. So, you think about the flow of worship. We go from gathering in the name of the triune God of our baptisms to confession, absolution. We go through the readings, we hear the sermon, and then we respond to the sermon with the creed, and then we respond to the Word of God with the offering. And I've always thought it's disjointed to take it out. Right? So now, like normally you'd stand for the creed, but now we don't stand for the creed because you stand for the creed and then you got to stay standing for the whole prayer of the church and the whole liturgy, and pretty soon everyone can't stand there anymore, and it does kind of hurt the flow, and I do think there's some good theological reasons for presenting our offerings to the Lord after God's spoken to us in word and sacrament. But it doesn't mean it's wrong to have it out. So I think the reason we've left it the way it is for so long is because people seem to be okay with it, and we thought communion was a bigger fish to fry in terms of trying to bring that back to kind of the way we had done it, and so we kind of left the offering till second. But that would be the big one for me, at least, is an opportunity to recognize giving God our best gifts in worship, and I feel like if it's at the doors, you still are, but it's kind of pushed to the side a little, you know what I mean? And it's not really a part of that worship service the way it used to be, so. Anyone like uncomfortable with that? Yep, Al?
Just a comment, I think, when we have it at the door, when the guests who might want to give a gift, they are less likely to do so.
Sure.
It's kind of, they don't see it on the way in, they don't think about it again on the way out. And when it's part of the service, they see that as, okay, I would like to, my gift presented at this time too.
Sure.
I mean, that's maybe not a theological reason, but I think it's a practical one.
Yeah. I know one thing, we had talked about a little bit too is a lot of people give online now. And so it's not as if, we don't want someone to feel pressured, like you pass a plate and you give online, so I got nothing to get, and trying to make someone feel guilty or anything. So that is one change that is different from before COVID to after. We didn't have many online givers before COVID. We have a lot of online givers now. And I think that's helped our offering. So I think that's been a good thing in a lot of ways. So, yeah, I don't know. We had talked about, maybe the care cards just get put in the offering plate, and that becomes a way for it takes that away. You don't feel like you're not putting anything in, I guess. It's kind of silly, but that's something to think about. That is something we had discussed a little bit, and that'd be another thing to consider. I guess maybe there's a way to take some of that away. But it is nice to be able to recognize in the worship service the giving of gifts to the Lord for what He's done for us. So, yeah.
The care cards going to go back into the pews also?
They are in the pews. What we found, though, is having them in the worship folder has helped get visitor information. And so the plan right now, what we'd like to do is to have them in the pews, but then still stuff them in the bulletin. And I know it's a pain because they fall out, but it does make it easier to get the info of visitors. It doesn't make that big a difference for our members, but when you got that person who's brand new in church, it's so important to have some way to follow up. And it does seem to help having it in the bulletin. We get more now than we used to. So,
Do you find that we're having some of those cards that are not filled out already, or taken home?
yeah, probably. We've got a whole, yeah, that probably happens. So you have a lot that fall out. We try to go around and pick them up when they fall out. I think with, I guess, I don't know, I should find out what happens with the bulletins that don't get taken, how many of those cards we take. But those, I mean, we print those, man, that mic's rough, huh? We print those pretty cheap, so it's not a significant expenditure. Yep.
I can help answer that. So for the ones that are still in the bulletins, they get taken out and used next week.
Okay, yeah. So we get a lot of them then. Yep.
Suggestion to people, if a husband and wife each grab a bulletin and one of them only fills out the card, I've always done this, I just put the blank one in the paper card.
Sure.
So that would make it easier so it doesn't fall out and it doesn't get wasted.
Yeah, or you can even put them in the ones in the pews. We got, yeah, lots in there. Yeah, you bet, you do that. So that's one change. Another thing to note is just how worship attendances went. I think before COVID hit, we're in the 190s for worship on a Sunday. I think since right now, we're in the 150s for worship. So we're not all the way back to where we were before COVID. I think the difference between when we had 3 services and 2, there doesn't seem to be a big difference. The worship attendance is about the same. So we'll see what happens, when we move into the school year, if hopefully that usually comes up. So hopefully that'll come up a little bit. But our Bible study attendance, on the other hand, has really been strong. So I think the Acts Bible study we've had really good attendance for. I don't know how many people have been checking out the videos, but I know the 20-minute Bible studies, both Saturday night and then Sunday, have been pretty well attended. So I think the plan in the new year would be to continue offering a Bible class on Saturday after worship for those who want to attend. Hopefully we'll get a decent group. That when we offered it before worship, we just didn't get that many. It was 2, 3, 4, 5 people that came. We're open after. We might have some more for that. And then we continue doing Bible study after worship on Sundays as well. And then we're also thinking of adding, we'll still have the Thursday morning Bible study. There's a thought of having like a digging deeper Bible class that would cover some of the CAP courses. Those are the Congregational Assistant Program courses. We have a member in our church who's taking those. We figure since we're offering it to that person, we might as well open up to the congregation. So that'll be a different night of the week. That'll be a totally separate Bible study from everything else, and will really involve digging a lot deeper into Scripture. So it could be a fun one to attend for that. Yeah, and then finally with our outreach, maybe just a note, it's not in here, but it's been fun to watch all the volunteers we've been having. We've just got a lot more people involved, helping out at Pillars, helping out with the breakfasts, helping out with at the Hope Center. It's fun walking over to Hope Center and seeing so many St. Matthew members now volunteering there. It's a cool thing, and really a lot of great opportunities to make relationships and share the gospel with people. That when I volunteer once a week, get pillars, you know, I, I, people they recognize they're getting that to me. So that's a cool thing, and we're we see them coming to church, and you're starting to see not just Pillars clients coming and sitting in the back of church, but people recognizing them, right, and going up and talking to them, which is a cool thing. So hopefully that continues. It's been really fun to watch that happen. As far as the forward-looking vision section, just a couple things, and I'll let Pastor Kuski go. The Mission and Ministry Committee, that committee is done. What they wanted to do is just find 3 or 4 things to improve. So what they did is they said, let's try to do our best with the donuts and discussions, the breakfast we offer. What's happened is we've expanded that and done our best to make that as accessible as possible. And as a result, we've got a lot more St. Matthew volunteers and a lot more Pillars clients joining us. So it's really been a great way to make some connections. Another thing the committee wanted to do was find some way to create connections with the Hope Center clients. And so the idea of starting a story hour for kids was what came from that, and that's just begun. So it'll be fun to see where that goes. And another thing that was thought about was how to use our facilities to their maximum potential. And so we formed a future facilities committee. If you remember a while ago, we kind of had to choose between the Hope Center and the food pantry because both were growing and both needed more space. So the food pantry has now found a new location in which to do its ministry, and the Hope Center will be taking over that area. So the future facilities committee is going to consider how to best use that space, as well as how to solve some kind of bigger picture problems that St. Matthew has, namely how to find a big gathering space where we can have meals and bigger Bible studies and bigger gatherings. Also, how to deal with accessibility to our parking and those kinds of things. So those are things the committee will be talking about, and just trying to lay out some, or give council some recommendations so possibly we can start solving some of those problems. So those are some things that came from the Mission and Ministry Committee. Any questions on that stuff? And the last thing is just the Communication Committee has finished its rebrand, we called it. You saw the new St. Matthew logo. We've ordered new care cards, new brochures, and all kinds of other stuff. So you'll start to see the signs and all that stuff going up all over the place. So that's done now. The next thing that'll be happening is a congregational planning meeting where we're going to ask the heads of all the ministries at St. Matthew to come together, lay out their plans, and hopefully to find a way of helping the Communication Committee to communicate everything that's happening at St. Matthew to our own congregation as well as our community. So that'll be the next thing they'll be working on. All right, that's all I got. Thanks.
Number 2, or Part B, however you're keeping track, I'll call attention to some of the items on page 15. So for number 1, with membership, Erica Bruzewitz, who passed away last year, we had her committal recently. In addition to her, Idella Spreeman, of course, had passed away at the end of June. Her funeral was in July. And then Arliss Wilfer, who did not have a funeral here, but had a private graveside ceremony. As her family wished, she would also be somebody that we sent along to heaven. So we're thankful for the opportunity to minister to them and to send them to their Heavenly Father above. As far as the membership actions, we had, I guess what is for us, a larger youth confirmation class this year. One of the baby that was baptized, Jaden, was from one of our prospects over in the Hope Center. And the 2 releases you can find on page 18, those will be officially acted upon by the voters. Charlene Gafford, that you might recall was part of our Grief Share program. She was one of our facilitators. And then Arlene Klimke. So I can answer questions about them now, or maybe even take that up in discussion later on. As far as other items there, going down to point number 9, there's been a good deal of benevolence, financial assistance given to mainly members, and as is noted there, the majority of that has gone for Christian family services counseling. So we've got about, I think, a half a dozen members, mostly since COVID, who've been dealing with some difficult issues and have been wonderfully, I guess, treated by the therapists there. So thank you for all the gifts that have come in for that. Right now, we stand at about $3,000 to $4,000 that we've expended. And to cover that, that's most of the budget for 2022. In addition to that, we've had about $1,000 in addition of members' gifts for benevolence. So if you're kind of figuring that out, if it continues, we're probably looking at between $6,000 and $7,000 that would be needed by the end of the year. So consider that in some of your additional gifts. That would be a good place for those to go in support of our family members. If you look down below underneath outreach, it's noted in 14 that in addition to the 100+ clients that are coming there each month, and that's about 300 when you add up all the family members, about 50 contacts are made, conversations that are held by our volunteers with those people, either in person or by phone. I think it's about kind of half and half, but what is really helpful there is just giving some encouragement or showing some compassion for the difficult circumstances that those people are working through, and then also leading them to realize that you've got some Christian folks here who have even more to give to them than the physical supplies that are going out. And so it certainly has opened some doors, like the baptism that I mentioned, for us pastors to follow up on. One other thing of note, Pastor Olson had mentioned it, point number 17, in the last quarter we had been having about 5 to 10 Pillars clients come to us downstairs. Since we moved over to the gym, that's increased to about 10 to 15. And in the last quarter, I'd say we've had 3 additional members who, kind of hang around and talk with some of the folks who come there. And we've also had some people now who have been serving those once-a-month lunches over at Pillars, who've done kind of the same thing, kind of walked around, met folks, have gotten to know them a little bit better. And what's interesting about that, as Pastor Olson had mentioned, is that folks will talk with us probably more readily when we sit down with them, especially over in the gym, than even they will with some of us pastors when they're over in the resource center, because it's just kind of a creepy place for some of them to share some pretty personal things. Whereas when they're coming to, to church people who they have learned, have some compassion, they're willing to share a good deal more, and at least we can give some encouragement to kind of know where they're at, even spiritually, so that we can give some of the gospel encouragement, or even some of the guidance from the law that's needed for those folks. So you may not always see a lot from that population, because for the most part, people are homeless for about 6 weeks. to plant the seed again. Cultivate that through us. So if you turn the page to page 16, our reach to more of our members. Point number 20, making phone calls through our discipleship or through our member care opportunities, or I think the biggest thing, and I see it happening from time to time, is that there's some members who come here time, and then somebody else having that friendly, how are you? Good to see you. Still know them as or as far as the people that we're reaching out to, point number 21, if it's volunteering either in the Hope Center or through some of those Pillars opportunities, phoning, doing story time, even giving support for some of the meals that are being offered on Wednesday mornings, or which will start up again, I think in September, some of the lunches that are being served to the Pillars folks. So I think that kind of highlights some of the items that I wanted to highlight. Any questions? Yeah.
I want to say, hi, Barry, the organ guy was here last night showing off the organ to some people from the pier, and he and I were chatting before they got here, and he said, yeah, we're a really friendly congregation, and how nice that people come up and talk to you here. And I just want to relate, our daughter and her family just went to their new church out in South Dakota, and she was already having a hard time being in a different place, different church and all that, and nobody she knew. Not one single person talked to them, said, hi, I'm so-and-so, hi, I'm not even the pastor, hi, welcome. Not one single word said to them, and she was just about in tears because they missed their church in Illinois. So I hear we get good marks on being welcoming. The best impression is made in the first 3 minutes when somebody walks into a place. So here we are.
Yeah, certainly there's room for improvement, no matter where you're at. But the point was made, if you didn't pick it up at home, is that the folks here are very welcoming and friendly, and that was noted by some of our guests. And to underscore that, for that to continue, again, if somebody is new and hasn't really gotten connected to the congregation, I guess we found that to be fairly true. Some of the folks, at least since I've been here, a lot of the folks, most folks don't assimilate themselves. So it's huge when somebody not only asks them to be involved, but just goes over and gets to know them better, Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. And still happens with Pastor Olson of me, especially after COVID. And of course, he came just before COVID started, so we'll kind of look at each other, and we hadn't been around as long as Pastor Milking. We'll kind of go, now, is that a member? And the only way to find out is to go over and ask them whether we've met them before. So sometimes it can be a little bit embarrassing because you're the pastor and you're supposed to know them, but that's the way you get to know folks, and they get to know you. Are we ready to go on with the Pillars Resource Center report? Ken, should I continue on there? Okay. So if you go to page 17, of note there is point number 2. We're really back and even have exceeded the number of clients that come to the Resource Center on a daily basis. So if you walk over there, there's maybe 15 or 20 people at the most at a time, but over the course of a day, there tend to be like 35 or 40 people that wander in and then come out. Some of them for some pretty important services that they are receiving so that they can get back on their feet and even into housing. I think even in spite of some of the housing difficulties in getting people in right now, I think they've still been placing 2 or 3 people a month, which I don't think is as many as they used to, but that's kind of picking up again. We noticed that at the Hope Center, because now we have some move-ins to help support as they get on their feet and are able to give some of those move-in supplies. So that has continued to be a blessing just in being able to have those folks here. And along with that, point number 4, in addition to us pastors and other people making those contacts, Sarah Gunther, who is that ministry-trained deaconess, especially for women. She does work in some of the county jails here in the area. she has continued to come in once a week and to work with 2 or 3 people that she has developed quite a good rapport with. So she is helping some of those folks along. As you may have noted, number 5, this summer again, we've had more folks hanging out during hours outside of the Resource Center and even after. You probably saw at least the one gentleman, if not the 2 next door. And that tends to be an issue during the summer. We've dealt with that at other times. It seems to be more the case this summer. There's just been a large influx of homeless people, not just here on our campus, but around town. And there's a number of reasons for that. But we are resources rich in this area, and word gets out, and people tend to flood into town even more during the summer than during the winter. So that's kind of a community issue. I guess what we've dealt with is not having a lot of people do that, but just having a few people who kind of made up their mind that they're going to kind of hang out and find places here on campus. And the Resource Center has been very supportive in having one of their outreach caseworkers even after hours come by, check in with those people, see if they can help them along. And they and us pastors are usually in pretty good contact. So like the folks, the one gentleman that was out, actually the 2 gentlemen that were out here tonight, I talked to both of them. The one decided that he would move along. The other one, I guess, decided that he was going to hang out despite the encouragement that he had received from the Pillars folks. So the welfare officer came by and apparently has dealt with them. So things seem to be fairly well taken care of. And if some of those people are, I guess, chronic cases, they're probably not going to be allowed even to be on the premises anymore. The Resource Center kind of does that. It's kind of tough love, but it keeps others, the majority, from having the resources being taken away from them in the way at least that it's being offered here just by a few chronic cases. So, but we appreciate any contact. I mean, if you hear from the neighbors, and we've been in contact with the neighbors, and some of them have had some concerns, or if you have some personal concerns, share it with us as pastors or with Ken Youngworth. We have a monthly meeting with the Pillars Advisory Committee folks, and I think they've done quite a good job in making sure that some of the chronic issues occasionally don't turn into something greater than that. But I'm certainly open to questions that you would have or other comments that you would have regarding that. Pat?
Just a question. How's Pastor Gunther doing? I didn't see him very often. He's still doing well?
Yeah, he's keeping busy. He's got those 2 new hips, so he's running circles around, I think, other pastors maybe his age. So he is serving in Amril as a part-time retired pastor. They called him to serve in that capacity. So he's down there virtually every weekend, doing their services, doing Bible study, and even carrying out some of the ministry during the work as much as has been asked of him, as well as capably continuing to make the shut-in calls. You can note that he continues to make 20, 25 calls a month on the average here. So, he's been blessed with good health and just that eagerness to serve his Lord and to serve his people. He might be listening, so thank you, Pastor Geiger, if you are. All right, thank you.
Pastor Olson already talked about the COVID procedures, so I think we'll go on to the update on the bell tower. I'll let Rick kind of chair this, but I think all the council members might pitch in and with some updates as well as we go.
Perfect. Thank you, Esther. Hopefully when everybody came in, they got to see a little bit of the video that we've kind of had. We kind of found an old reel of 8mm film in the office, and we've digitized it. So we do have the bell tower from foundation to the ringing of the first bell. So it's kind of neat. So hopefully you saw some of that. Otherwise, if you're interested, it's kind of a neat video to watch. I was surprised it's in color. I didn't think there was color back in 1955, but I guess there was. So, to Ken's point, Rick Fransky is taking the lead as our point person for two projects in particular. One was the front of the church. We had quite a bit of work done. That's kind of wrapping up into its final stages. And then we kind of also asked him to head up the bell tower, and he's been doing that as well. We're coming closer to hopefully some decisions on what we need to do and how to go about it. Wanted to share some of that with you tonight. What do you got to do? Okay, so I can make it better? Thank you. Share some of that with you tonight. And he couldn't make it here tonight, unfortunately, so he kind of put me in the role here a little bit, so I quickly threw some slides together and a couple of bullet points, and I'll share that stuff with you tonight here. And we had hoped to be farther along in our decision process, but the world's just not moving that fast anymore. I don't know why. It seems like no matter where you go and try to get a quotation or get somebody to do things on a timely basis, it's just not working that way. So things have been relatively slow and slower than we had hoped to probably be at this point, but they are what they are. So I put together a couple of slides. First, I guess want to just kind of share a bit of a photo review to kind of give you an idea. It's kind of hard sometimes to see from the ground what's up there, so here's a way to get up there and take a look at it. And then we can review some of the timeline of events that have taken place so far, and then review some of the preliminary costs that we have, and then look at maybe some possible options going forward. We're not in a position to make any decisions tonight, so this is strictly informational, but I think it's time that we need to start talking seriously about it and hopefully even end up in a special council meeting or a special voters meeting here in the near future to make some decisions and get going forward on this. So just a bit of a video review. You can see this is actually looking at the east face of the tower from over here on Mason Street, and you can see some of the damage and the problems that we have up towards the top. These are actually two pictures side by side, so don't think of it as one picture, but
Use this instead, so it's popping.
is it going to work?
Yeah.
Okay, we use this instead. You can see the spalling that's taking place on the brickwork and what that's done with the water and the moisture that gets in there over the years. And then, of course, actually in front of the cross there, that's some patchwork that was actually done a few years ago, because when they originally built the tower, unfortunately, that edge actually tilted inwards instead of outwards, so the water ran inward instead of outward, which has kind of contributed to some of our problems over the years. So there were some patched attempts over the years, but they've kind of gone by the wayside as well. Again, the photo on the left, we actually had one of the contractors go up there and open up an area on the tower to see what the penetration was and how deep the problem actually goes in the tower. Actually, on that particular side of the tower, it was actually felt pretty good about what he saw behind there. On the opposite side of the tower, unfortunately, we weren't able to open it up because of some stonework on top that just didn't look secure enough. So there are some issues that need to be addressed quickly. And actually, this is where you see the level there is actually the northeast side of the tower, and that's where we have probably the most concern, that section there over the parking lot. I purposely park my Jeep under there if I get an opportunity. I do. But, yeah, that's getting relatively bad, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a few minutes, but you can tell it's actually starting to pull away quite problematically. This is actually up on the inside of the tower, and the damage isn't near as bad on the inside of the tower, but you do see again a lot of spalling, which is basically when moisture gets into the brick, and then you have a freeze-thaw cycle on it, and it will kind of peel the brick away. In some cases, it'll even pop the brick out. On the inside here, it's mostly just the faces of the brick kind of coming off a little bit. Not so much structurally a problem, but you know, you can tell what's going on there. It's not a good thing, and over time it continues to get worse. The brick that they used on this tower is again a little bit of the problem, and it was probably a design issue, a very porous brick. A lot of surface area on the outside, porous, not a fired brick, sucks up a lot of moisture, and it's been kind of our problem from day one. So the timeline of events, I guess just to share a little bit of the timeline of events. The bell tower is known to have issues for lots of years. I mean, we've known it since I've been here. I know we've been dealing with everything from chasing pigeons to bell clappers to, again, the water that came inward instead of rolling off the outside of the tower. Falling brick on the tower has been an ongoing issue. You'll see chunks that kind of pop off and fall to the ground, and that's the result of that moisture getting in there, and then a freeze and thaw cycle, and then it just kind of deteriorates the brick. In the spring of last year, we engaged Excel Engineering and asked them to do a study of the tower. They actually did a pretty thorough study of the tower, to be very honest with you. They flew a drone over every inch of that tower from top to bottom, and they videoed every inch of the tower. They compared it to drawings, and they provided us with a good amount of information. After that, we began to reach out to different contractors. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Over the course of the months, Excel did a survey of the tower, going through it inch by inch. They actually finalized that in July of last year. So we've had that study since July of last year. The findings of the report, their comments in their report, the bell tower needs immediate repair. Okay, so that was their findings. In working with Excel, we then began the process of going out and seeking contractors that could help us address some of the issues that we saw. Of course, we were in the middle of COVID. And nothing happened, and it's been slow even coming out of COVID to get things to happen. So that's been a kind of a challenge for us. In the spring of this year, we were in the process of working with Stats Restoration and Engineering. They actually did the work on the front of the church, and that was again a recommendation through Excel Engineering, because we were looking for somebody to do all that tuck point work and do the restoration on the front of the church, and we engaged Stats. While they were working on the front of the church, they agreed to take a look at the bell tower, and they're the ones that have probably given us the most information related to it so far. Following the inspection and assessment, a quotation was provided along with recommendations, and again, that came from Stats, and that's probably the best quotation that we have so far. We just had a meeting with them last Wednesday, where we got the most updated information. We then, of course, had a bunch of questions for them, and it kind of goes back to where they need to do some updates and some rethinkings and to actually expand a little bit from the discussion that we had in the meeting. Given the need to secure materials, which is probably 8 to 12 weeks out, and looking for a brick that would match and some other things, it is very unlikely that they could begin this project this year and get it done. They're looking more to the spring of next year, although they are recommending some temporary work be done on the north face to take care of the area that we're actually worried about that looks most likely to collapse at this point. Not the whole tower collapse, but the fascia on the fascia brickwork. And of course, we don't want that to happen. We want it to be a controlled situation. So that's a recommendation from stats at this point. This was I just grabbed this kind of a little bit from the engineering report because I think it was important to highlight the point that coming out of the engineering report from Excel Engineering, the bell tower needs repair immediately, and I think that's an important takeaway. We asked them to look at it structurally as well as cosmetically to tell us what the challenges are. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a can of worms. You don't know what's in it until you open it up. But the sense is actually, I think, and this is maybe just my opinion, but with all of the discussions that we've had and the exploratory work that we have so far, and even the feedback for quotations and whatnot, is the feeling that it is not as much structural problem, although it could become a structural problem if we continue to ignore it. I mean, it will become a structural problem if we continue to ignore it, but it is repairable at this point. Just to highlight some of the costs that we have so far. The engineering study that we did with Excel last year in 2021, that's cost us $7,000. And that did a great job of documenting it and kind of giving us, I guess, a kickoff to where we were going to go. And it's like, where do you start? Well, we're not structural engineers. We're not experts on any of this. We need to bring in some experts. We worked with Excel Engineering before on several projects, and they do a lot of work with churches and whatnot, so this is right in their wheelhouse. So we did have them do the study, and that was a cost of $7,000. In 2021, we did get a repair cost from Catalyst Construction. It was for $376,000. And it was with the intent that it would be repaired. It was, again, although they didn't spend a lot of time looking at it, which was very kind of concerning to us, it was, I don't know if it was a throw of the dart or what it was, but we wish they would have put a little bit more time into studying what it was before they actually gave us an estimate. But we did get an estimate in 2021. We went out for other estimates in 2021, but we received none back. So we really struggled to get contractors engaged. Again, COVID was going on at that point, and things just, nothing was moving very fast. In 2022, tower repair costs received from Stats Restoration. This isn't just the one that came out of a meeting that we had last week. Their cost currently is at $236,000 in repair costs. Again, I would caution that if anything, that number will probably go up before it goes down. We had a meeting with them. They have spent time up on the tower. They have spent time in the tower and have kind of put some thought into what they're doing. Based on the discussions that we had last week in them and talked about some more things, there's probably some opportunities to take their thinking a little bit farther, which of course is going to probably increase the cost a little bit, but probably give us a better outcome in the end. And then costs received from Catalyst Construction. One of the questions that was always out there, and I guess a question you have to ask is if we don't repair it, what would it cost to remove it? And that's not a small cost either. Okay, so to take it down or dismantle it, the cost that we have currently, although we don't have competitive costs for that, is $198 or almost $200,000. So that gives you kind of some idea of where the cost numbers are currently sitting. So options. I mean, you could say there's an option to do nothing, but I don't think that's a very good option, to be honest with you. Unless you own a Jeep that is nickel and diming you to death and you want to get rid of it. But no, there's, of course, we can do nothing, which is, I think, probably not really an option, but it's up there anyways. Remove the tower and do not replace it. Another option might be to remove the tower and replace it with a different structure sometime in the future. And then I guess the fourth option, at least the council has been tossing around and working towards, is to repair the existing tower and bring it back to a state where it's easily maintained again. So that's what I know. And I'm welcome to any questions, and the council will probably have to ask me or help me answer some of them, but that's kind of where we are right now. Carl?
Are you discussing whether you want to keep the tower or not? Is it important to the church, or isn't it important to get rid of that part of it?
I think people have their different opinions, on that. I certainly have mine.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, let me repeat the question. Carl was wondering if we're having the discussion about which way the council is thinking or leaning, to remove it or repair it. And we are kind of having that discussion, but we're not necessarily the decision makers. I think that the church needs to be the decision makers. I think the council is kind of done a great job in doing the investigative work and trying to bring all the information forward, and this is kind of where we are right now. We know we need to do something. We have a pretty good idea what it's going to cost. We've got a pretty good idea who are probably the right people to be doing it. If we are going to repair it, or in the sense that we remove it.
Does the cost have an influence on this?
Cost always has an influence, yes. But when you look, I'm going to back up here a little bit if I can. But I'll tell you that when you look at a cost to remove it of $200,000 and you have a cost to repair it for $236,000, and
You don't have any permanent.
I do believe that the cost that we're looking to restore it with is a permanent cost. Yeah. They're talking about doing some mitigation work where they would put drip edges and some other things to help shed the water in the right way. They're talking about sealing the entire structure with some type of Ken, you probably know the name of it? Some type of a poly resin to seal it so water can no longer penetrate the bricks. So not only are we just kind of patching it and repairing it, but we are putting some mitigation in place so that the problems don't repeat themselves. I would say the other thing that they're looking at doing, just to give you an idea, is to remove the fascia brick, 60 bricks down all the way around, okay? Because chances are we won't be able to match the brick that's out there anyway, so we're looking for a clean transition to whatever is going to be the replacement up there. They would put a stone ring around it, I'm going to call it a ring, but a stone fascia around it, and then that new brick, 60 bricks up, would replace the old brick, so it would be repaired. They would take some of that brick that they took down from the 60 bricks up above, and they would use that to replace some of the areas that are down lower on the structure, where they would take the old brick out, tuck a new brick in, and be able to patch those areas. So I think based on the discussion that we've had with them, their restoration approach, if it all works that way, is a quality product when it's done, and has to be maintained, just like the building needs to be maintained, or any building needs to be maintained, but at least it's at a point where you can maintain it. Right now, it's not.
I don't think that number, if I remember right, included going all the way.
It did not. That's why.
That would be a bigger number than we have up there.
Yep.
If they did all the way around, went down 60 bricks and then put a quarter in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they said that might be a better option than just repairing only what they have.
Right. They had it like 40 brick down or something. I don't know, when we looked at it, we expanded it, and then we said, not just on the one side, take it all the way around. So that's why I said that 236 number is probably a number that will go up. I could see that number going as high as 300,000, to be very honest with you. That's just my gut feeling. I don't know that. We've asked them to re-quote that in that way. We were hoping to have that quote for this meeting. It did not come that quickly. So that's what I can tell you about that. Pastor Olson, or Pastor Husky, sorry.
If I'm correct, that 198 as a possible
We,
The same thing could be true of that.
yeah, the same thing is true with that. When we look at that, it's like, okay, that's the removal. What does that mean? We don't know what that means. I mean, is that the removal of every brick in the foundation? Does it include tipping charges to get rid of the structure and all the other things that go with that? Details that need to be understood, because right now we've got like a that says 198,000 to remove it, and we're not sure what's all in that removal.
You're going to present this to the congregation in writing, or are you going to do this?
I think the thought going forward here is that,
Can you repeat the question?
I'm sorry, repeat the question. Carl asked, are we going to pull this together into another presentation and present it to the congregation for decision purposes? Yeah.
At that point, it would be a recommendation from the church council to the congregation with, you can either vote on this or not. We're not just gonna give you, here's all the information, what do you wanna do? The council has been close to this. We'll make the recommendation on which way to proceed. And then the congregation, they can mull it over, they can discuss it, and then make a decision.
Yeah, very much. I think the congregation needs to be the body that's making this decision, especially with the cost, and not only the cost involved, but also the connection that has as part of this church. So I mean, and it does.
The congregation wants it or don't want it.
Does, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. John?
It looks like we're gonna have some time, because it looks like this fall is, regardless, it's not gonna happen with stats here because of getting materials and time constraints. So having that time, I think we should get a couple more quotes on not only the restoration, but then also for the demolition, because Catalyst is about almost 30% higher on their estimate for the rebuild. Maybe they are on the Omni also on demolition.
Yeah, that could be. That could very well be. I would. Yeah, I think on the demolition for sure, we need to have a much clearer understanding of what that number includes. I would also, of course, welcome other quotations around restoration. Both of them agreed. The only thing I will say is, I don't think it's wait until next spring. I think it's try to get something done this fall so that we can be ready to proceed in the spring. So I mean, if we need to order brick or whatever it is, and we've got 2 or 3 months lead time, well, that can be November, December, and January, and we can be ready to go in the spring. So I would like to kind of keep the ball rolling here a little bit. We're got some urgency. One of the urgencies that Stats is recommending is that on the north side, that continues to come farther and farther away from the building, and something needs to be done. They would like to go up there and take down that section that's bulging outward and either put something temporary in its place to kind of get it so that it's not going to fall. But the potential of it falling between now and the spring is actually pretty probable. So that's a concern.
You've got one person in charge of this now, is that right?
Rick Fransky is leading this up. He really is. And he's done a great job. I mean, he pounds on a lot of doors to try to get people to react.
We need to get this together instead of, it looks like too many people are thinking about this.
Yeah. Well, right now it's just the council that's thinking about it. So this is our first step to bring it to the congregation. Ideally, Carl, we would have had it all put together and had it ready to go at this meeting here. And it's not that we didn't have the energy to do that. It's just that when you ask people for things and they don't give them to you, it just doesn't happen. So it's the world of construction right now. They just don't respond to you like you're the only customer they have. So unfortunately, it's that way. Pastor Milky?
John did exactly what I was saying.
Okay. Pastor Olson? No?
Well, just to know, I mean, it's good to get more quotes, but we've been working for 2 years to
Yeah.
get these quotes.
Yeah.
I don't think we get many more quotes.
Right.
It's, at a certain point, I think, Carl, right, we do have to begin to get going with the decision-making process.
Yep.
I mean, it's not as if we have to meet on the doors, get quotes. We have our rep tried, and then now Rick Fransky's trying. So this is a 2-year process. At a certain point, you just got to the numbers you get. So.
Yeah. Yep. So, and I think the other thing I want you to keep in mind, if we did remove the tower, and there has been no consideration or no thinking as to what, if people wanted to replace the tower with something, some type of a different structure, something, something to put our bells on, basically. There has been no thought given to that. All of our efforts so far has been, what would it take if we had to take it down and remove it, or what would it cost us if we repaired it? Those are the two kind of options that we've been talking about. Pat?
I'm not familiar with stats. Where are they based?
Milwaukee. I'm glad somebody knows. They're the ones that did the front of the church.
Yep.
You probably didn't know they were there because they did a great job.
I saw their lift.
Yeah, I mean, they cleaned up every day, but they did all the things that we asked them to, including, and again, now that brick on the front of the church has been all sealed. So, I mean, over time when the church was originally built, they didn't think about sealers, but nowadays they have different products available to do things to make them more maintenance-free and to last a little bit longer. Cheryl?
Has the family that donated the bells been apprised of the situation?
That was brought up at the meeting last Wednesday. I called Mary Roll last week and explained the situation to her, and she was going to contact her siblings and get back to me. And she sent me an email this morning. Basically, their opinion is the church should do whatever is best for the church, but they did mention that they would like to see it stay up. But they would like to see it stay up. So I think they would prefer the repair to demolishing it, but it's not a strong opinion that they would say, well, you must do it that way. So that's the feedback I got from them. Now, I don't know what other families were involved with the building of the tower. I don't know if anybody else knows. That's a little before my time. It went up the year I was born, so.
Anybody know those people?
It's Mary's grandparents.
Okay.
Mary Roll's grandparents and uncle, I believe.
Okay.
Since 1955, I was just somebody's idea.
So, that's where they cast the bells.
Oh,
Yeah, so we do not have anybody who's a current member here who is involved with.
Yeah, this whole family.
did you?
Pastor Olson was,
Yeah.
had said first.
Just maybe a note on that, when people give offerings to St. Matthew, we give offerings to St. Matthew, so St. Matthew took care of the ministry, God's given St. Matthew to carry out. And so I think what they said, that St. Matthew should do its best for the ministry
emergency work is gonna be done before winter. The cost of it, that's an additional, it's not reflected. And if we don't get under contract this year, then, and wait till next year, then we're talking about other years' worth of inflation.
Yeah.
I don't know about the demolition. I think we need to meet with Catalyst, but is it something they can do yet this year? Would that make a difference?
You mean the demolition?
Yeah.
We'd have to ask them, yeah. Yeah.
Does Carl know anything about these?
He says he knows them all.
I know all
Give him the microphone, let him talk.
You want to tell us about it?
What?
Who were they?
Well, of course, they were members of this church.
Yeah.
And John had two daughters and a son. And he looked out for these people, family especially. And he was trying to get his family into this church more often. So what he did was this. He told his daughters that he'd like them to marry Lutheran people. And I think he kind of helped them think about this a little bit. But they ended up marrying two of our teachers from our parochial school. And so that worked out well for him. He's well in favor of that. Now, his son had a different problem. His son got sick, I think, around the age of 21, and he passed away very shortly. And he was a good friend of my older brothers. They chummed together. So he was really a very thoughtful person. And when he built this here, I remember Gary Roloff telling me that, did you realize, he said, my father-in-law told me that he spent over $10,000 on this, on this project. I don't know if that could have happened back then, but yes, I believe it could. That's a long time ago. That's when the dollar was still a dollar.
I just remembered what I was gonna say, that, I think that bell tower fund of like 48,000, I think that was part of the gift too, to perpetuate the care of the bell tower.
Yes, it was.
It
And
dates back to the 1950s.
yeah, yeah, and that's why I say it's been there ever since I remember seeing it. So, yeah. And that gift has remained in there, and the only thing that has been used for to date has been the $7,000 that we used out of it for the Excel engineering work that was done to do the survey on the top. That's the only dollars that have come out of there over all the years. But there is like $48,000 in the fund. Of course, back then they would have built 4 towers, I guess. So no, it doesn't. It's unbelievable. So, any other questions? All right. I think our mission going forward is the council is going to get the final estimates that we can get and get as much more information as we can get. I'm hopeful that we can come to a decision point, at least within the council, as to what we want to present to the congregation. It'll probably, hopefully, I don't know, this is me again just speaking, maybe in a special meeting here in September or October, maybe we can catch it at the next quarterly meeting, but it would be nice to put this under contract with somebody before the end of the year so that they can put the resources together and get moving on materials that they're going to need to do it, if assuming the congregation decides to repair it. Okay. Pat?
Just to ask you a question, maybe you
Yep.
already said this, but did Stats give you an estimate to do this north side facade work?
They have not given us, to just do the bandage job on that side so it doesn't fall. They have not given us that number yet. They've just given us the recommendation, and based on what we've seen in the last 2 months, which is movement already in the last 2 months, it probably won't last through the winter. So I think we kind of heed that. Now, if they would do this restoration, there's in their quotation is like $30,000 worth of scaffolding. I mean, the entire bell tower will get scaffolded, okay, while the work is going on. repair job over here, they would just bring in a lift. And they would take down whatever they need to take down before it falls down. They would probably put something temporary, maybe some leftover, something that they have in its place to just kind of keep it weathered for the winter until they could tear at it in the spring. So that's a recommendation. Although we do not have a price on that. But I'll be very honest with you, that price tag could easily be $6,000-7,000. I mean, it adds up in a hurry. It's just crazy.
If they do a restoration, do the bells need to be removed?
No. Mm-mm. No, I think we could keep bringing them too. So. All right, any other questions? All right, I've done the best I can here, Tom.
I realize this is the first time most of you have heard much about the bell tower situation, although I know a lot of people have been asking questions. Think about it a little bit, and as you develop more questions, and I'm sure you probably will, talk to your council members, pass it along to them, so that we can use that input as we deliver what to do. But a lot of this will depend on information that we have yet to receive, and that will take some time. But your input is very important to this process because it's a big decision. Any more questions about bell tower? Otherwise, I'll move on to the food pantry, which Pastor mentioned briefly before. I'll just add a couple comments. Food pantry has moved to a location. It's a little strip mall on West College Avenue. It's between Colosso Jeep and Firestone Tire. If you're familiar with that area at all, there's like 4 little businesses in that strip mall. They have one of those slots now. They did their main move this last Saturday, but they'll still be moving stuff over there over the next several weeks. They don't have a definite timeline as of the last time I talked to them as to how long that would take. But they will be clearing stuff out, so it won't be long, and Hope Center will be able to start using some of that space. Other than that, I don't have anything more to add for food pantry. Are there any questions about the food pantry? Are there any questions about anything else that we've talked about tonight that you haven't got an answer to or just thought of as we were moving along here? Okay, I would like to close the forum then and call the voters meeting to order.
Move to close the forum.
Do I hear a second for closing? All In favor of the minutes from the last forum, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Next up is to vote to ratify the membership actions. Pastor mentioned those in his report. Do you want to just mention those again for everyone, who they are?
Yeah, page 18, bottom right, membership actions. On the third line is the recommendation to release Charlene Gafford to her own spiritual care. And then likewise, the fourth item, Arlene Klimke, release her to her spiritual care. Maybe the one difference between the two is Charlene has been declining in her mental abilities, and I think probably due more to the family situation. Just we haven't been able to really serve her like we once did. But in some of the communication that took place, we made it clear to her that if the opportunity were to arise, that we would certainly be more than willing to start that up.
Okay, I believe we should vote on each of these separately. So, first I would entertain a motion for Ms. Gafford, yes, thank you. There it is. Christine, or Charlene Gafford.
Move to release Charlene Gafford to her own spiritual welfare.
I have a motion to release Charlene Gafford. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second has been given. Any discussion? Okay, then I call the motion. All in favor of releasing Charlene Gafford to her own resources, say aye. Aye. All opposed? No opposed, so she will be released. And Pastor, I presume we sent out a letter or something to that regard, or?
Yeah, we confirm that with them.
Okay. All right, then the second individual, Arlene Klimke, I would entertain the motion.
Move to release Arlene Klimke to her own,
Okay, I would hear a motion to release Arlene Klimke. Do we have a second? Second. Do we have a second? Any discussion? Are there any circumstances about Arlene that you can add, Pastor, that you're aware of?
She joined and was with us, back in 2018 maybe, and not long after discontinued her involvement. Over COVID, of course, it was difficult to be in touch with her, but in calling through the list any number of times, she finally did answer the list. Was pretty, she was grateful for our ministry to her, but she was adamant that she no longer wanted to read.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I will call the motion then. All in favor of releasing Arlene Klimke, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, she will be released, and the office will take care of that. Right, to go out. All right, next on the agenda is to vote to accept the financial reports.
so move.
That would include both treasurers and foundation. I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
Second is given. Any discussion?
This is just for a treasurer's report, or did you say
I
the
think-
foundation also?
I said foundation also.
That wasn't my motion.
Okay, we will vote on them separately then. Was the second also for only the treasurer's report? Okay, any discussion about the treasurer's report?
I can't hear you.
No, we need to approve the minutes from last meeting.
We did that earlier. Okay. Okay, he was asking if we had the minutes from the last meeting approved. Was pointed out there too. Back to adjourning. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Let's get this over with. Okay, all in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is passed. Pastor, will you please close?
All right, we'll go to prayer. Lord, we thank you for all those who come before us here at St. Matthew, for the ministry that you've carried out throughout the years for our congregation, and for the ways you've benefited us. And we ask you to be with us as we continue to look towards the ministry you placed before us today. Grant us wisdom to use your resources, grant us strength to carry that ministry out, and grant us to be instruments in the advancement of your kingdom. Be with us on our journeys home this evening, grant us a good night's rest, and then grant us fruitful labor